Alright folks, welcome to another edition of Lid Tips, the ham radio show where we talk about and discuss things that are of interest to ham radio or amateur radio operators. Today's episode is our monthly Q&A for November 2020. Before we get started, I did want to say, go ahead and click some of these buttons down below. There's a like button, comment button, subscribe button, share button. If you click them, it'll make you happy. Now let's go ahead and get started. All right, now one quick thing before we get started is that I wanted to tell a little bit of a story. And it's a story where I pulled a stand move. And what happened was that I had some handheld radios that I needed to program. And most of the time at the TheSmokinApe studios, we use Linux machines or we use Macintosh machines. But back in March, I did buy a Windows computer, so now most of the time everything's on Windows. But this was before that, and I had pulled out my little Windows 10 netbook that I have that is really a piece of crap. And I set everything up. I plugged the cable into the laptop. I fired it up. I turned my HT on. I had the cable plugged in there. And I could not read the radio from Chirp. I couldn't connect at all. I could see the cable in Device Manager, but I couldn't connect to it. And what I was thinking is, at the time, I was doing lots of work with HTs, and the various drivers needed to be installed or reinstalled or rolled back based off of Windows patching and stuff like that. And so the first thing I do is I just remove all the drivers and reinstall the drivers, and it didn't work. And this radio requires proprietary software. It doesn't use Chirp. So I uninstalled and I reinstalled the software, and I could not get it to work. And so now I'm thinking the cable's bad, and I'm looking at trying different cables. And what I came to realize is that the cable was not pushed all the way into the ports on the HT. And I wasted about an hour. So I think the moral of the story, or the advice here, or the lid tip is that when you start to have problems, always check your connections first. I spent a tremendous amount of time and grief messing around with computer settings and removing drivers, and it was just a big waste. All right, let's dive into the slides. And today's first comments are coming from the MFJ 2012 all-center fed dipole video that I posted a few weeks ago. And Walt says he uses the MFJ 2010 and was daily on FT8, and he's completely satisfied with his performance. And then Mark H said he has been really happy with his. It tunes up nicely on 40, 20, 18, 10, and 6. He has it about 30 feet in a tree, inverted V, and it's exceeded his expectations. When I had mine mounted, it was an inverted V as well, and it performed really, really well. I was quite surprised and pleased with it. Got great performance, and I was happy with the antenna. And I'm glad to hear that other folks are having success with a similar antenna. My buddy Red Summit, he says, interesting, Ape. I like that you got into the box and explained how it works in there. I didn't know any of that stuff. And if you remember correctly from the video, what I did is I took the balun case or unun case apart. And what we saw in there was a 1-to-1 choke balun along with a 4-to-1 balun. And it was pretty interesting. It was a learning experience for me as well. And I was really glad that I took the time to take that apart and then do some of the research on the antenna design to find out what was going on in there. So it was a fun video. And then H. Higgins, he says, thanks especially for the teardown. And so I'll try to do more of that type of stuff in the future when we review any types of similar antennas or products. This is from the same video, but it's a little bit of an unrelated topic that I did want to talk about. Great video, Ape. Would you look at doing 100-watt amplifiers for the G90 besides the XPA 125B? I've looked at the Radio Oddity PAX 100, but a lot of bad reviews. Thanks. One of the things I'll say is that I love my G90. It's a really good radio for the $450 that you pay for it. There's a lot of features on there. It's got a great tuner. I like the display. It's a little small, but I can still read it. I'm not that old yet. I'm not going to buy any amps for mine. When you start to look at it, especially like that XPA 125, it's a couple $100. It's like $500, $450, something like that. The combined price of that's what I paid for my 7300, and I just don't see myself using that. I do like to take the G90 if I go somewhere, whether it's in my backyard or whether that's to a buddy's house or whether that's on vacation. It would be nice, but I'm not going to lug to have more watts, but I'm not going to lug an amp around or do anything like that. And that's where that PAX 100 seems interesting. It's a really small amplifier. But like you, I've heard nothing but bad reviews on it. Now, I know some folks have got some videos out and have had some moderate success with it, but I really think that that's probably in a more of a controlled environment, and it's probably short-term use and not long-term use. Uh, It'll be interesting to see how well that amp does over time. I'm not interested in it, but if Radio Oddity does end up sending me one, I'll test it. I'll do a review on it, but I'm not going to spend the money on it. And this is from that same MFJ 2012 video. And Kevin, he says that, oh man, unvarnished wire still makes my blood boil. MF junk. Only 1 month of my dipole SWR was all over with no change the antenna, but I could already see the copper starting to rot. Good luck. Well, I appreciate the wish of good luck, and I had the antenna up for probably 2 weeks. I can't remember exactly. I put antennas up and down all the time because I like to play around with different antennas and test them out. And in that couple weeks, I did notice discoloration on the copper wire. And I don't know if it was going to rot or if it was going to go all the way through or what. I wasn't, and I'm not going to take the time to varnish it. If something does happen and something, the wire does break or something like that, I'll just put a new wire on it. It's not really that big of a deal to me. But I could see somebody spending, $90, I think is what the antenna costs, and having a problem with it and being upset about it. So thanks, Kevin, for sharing the experience, and hopefully other people can take something away from it. This comment comes from the video that I did on the MFJ 911H. It's a 4-to-1 or a 1-to-1 balance, switchable balun. And he says, thank you for this. Being a newbie and having a fascination with loops, how would this work as part of a delta loop? Thanks in advance. Now, one of the things that we covered in the video is that device is made for indoor use only. It's not waterproof. So if you put it outside, you would definitely have water, moisture getting into there and potentially damaged by the elements. So what I told Walter is that I wouldn't use it for a delta loop unless you're doing it indoors, and I don't really know how somebody would do that. I don't have any direct experience with delta loops. I read about them to try to learn about them, and I want to put one up out back probably next summer. But this is not a good, that device is not a good candidate for that. This is more of when you run some twin lead or some ladder line into your house, and then you need to apply a balun at that point. If I was putting up a delta loop, I would look at the LDG 4-to-1 balun that they have. I have talked to somebody, Evan from HRCC, and that's what he used, and he said he had a lot of success with it. And I believe that's a pretty common solution, so maybe you want to check that out. And from that same video, Walter Edwards, he said, thank you for another insightful video. I love to build antennas. My issue is where do I source the parts, especially the toroids? And what I told him is that, hey, thanks for watching. I'm glad you liked the video. But I covered in pretty good depth in my video, Toroids, Chokes, and Balance for Ham Radio Part 1, where on eBay you can buy toroids and get a quality toroid at a pretty good price. And I also covered a couple of the purchasers or a couple of the sellers on Amazon, and you can check that out. One of the things is you want to make sure that you get a good toroid from a good dealer to make sure it's not a knockoff or a fake or mislabeled. So you want to use reputable dealers, and I cover all of that in that video. So go ahead and check it out. Now this is from my HF antennas for ham radio video. And George says, great video. I'm experiencing with random wires and end feds in the backyard. Just a question for you. How high off the ground do you mount the 9-to-1 unun? And is your antenna directional with regards to the counterpoise? So I've had the unun mounted at various heights. I had it set up as a horizontal NVIS configuration. And at that point, the unun was about 19 feet, somewhere right around there, feet off the ground, and the wire just ran straight across. And I didn't have any problem with that, and I was able to get out pretty well, especially for it being NVIS. And I used that setup for quite some time. It's my understanding that like 9-to-1s and 49-to-1s like to be closer to the ground. So what I do these days is I mostly will mount the ununs around 3 feet, 4 feet off of the ground. And keep them pretty low, and I'll set up a sloper or an inverted V configuration with the wire, depending upon how long it is. And I find that works really well for me. Now, you have a couple of different options. Like one is you can use a counterpoise. Two, you can use the coax as part of your counterpoise. I don't recommend that. I've never really had great success with that. Or you could just ground the unun to something. Grounding the unun is probably your best bet. Because when you use a counterpoise, unless that counterpoise is underground, right, so it's buried in a couple inches of soil, it does become part of your antenna system, and it will radiate, and it will impact the directionality of your radiation pattern. So what I would suggest is that if you do have to have a counterpoise, mine just runs across the ground. It's a 17-foot wire. And then when I had the NVIS configuration, it just hung straight down. When it hung straight down, I really didn't notice anything. But when I have it on the ground, you can notice some directionality. And what I would say is that go ahead and use a tool like Whisper or a digital mode like FT8, and then go ahead and run for a while, and then go into PSK Reporter Map, and then you can take a look at your propagation, and you can see where geographically you're getting out to. And then go ahead and move the counterpoise and see if that makes any difference. But the important thing to note is that any wire or anything hooked up to your onion that is not grounded or underground is going to affect your radiation pattern. And then from that same video, J. Russ, he says MCOM3 is a nice setup. I've got installed in a permanent setup in an inverted L. I run it with his FT991. It's a great radio. And he's looking at the standard of MCOM at 130 feet. And I really like my MCOM3. It's a little long. It's around 71 feet long, so it's a little bit of a challenge for me to get into the backyard. I set it up as a inverted V when I do set it up, and it's very well built. I would love to set it up as an inverted L, so maybe we'll play around and try something like that. It's still warm enough where I can get outside and spend some time working on the antennas. And then in terms of 130 feet, I told Jay, I said, I don't know what I would do with that much wire. I definitely don't have the space to put it up. And he said that he had his going, I believe it was a half square, going up like 25 feet, running horizontally, and then coming down on another mast 25 feet. So that's an interesting setup as well. I'd like to play around with something like that. And then Carl, he jumped in. He says, if you're looking for a permanent end fed under 70 feet long, check the MCOM2. It will work. It's 60 feet long. And then he provided the link. And I think I remember looking at that, but for whatever reason, I went with the MCOM3. I'll go back and take another look at it. These days, most of the time, I'm building antennas because I have the parts to do that, and I like the learning experience. I would encourage anybody to go ahead and attempt to build an antenna. It's not as difficult or as frightening as it initially seems. But maybe I'll check this one out. I just don't know if I want to spend. It's probably about $125, give or take. I don't know if I want to spend the money if I could build something that's going to work for me. Either way, thanks, Carl. Appreciate the information, and hopefully it helps somebody. So Christian over at 100 Watts in a Wire, he's actually just starting to put out some YouTube videos and does a podcast. So check him out if you haven't. He said he couldn't get past the wire and the coax on the Soda Beams antenna, so he built a couple that are stronger. He loves linked dipoles. Keep pushing, Ape. 73. So, one, thanks for the comment, Christian. I appreciate it. And I like linked dipoles a lot myself. I want to get into building more trap dipoles, so that way once the dipole's up, I don't have to take them down to change bands. I'm a band hopper. That's the name of the antenna, where I switch bands all the time. So for me, multi-band antennas seem to work great. And, like I said, the Soda Beams antenna performs fantastic. I have the band hopper, the 40, 30, 20, and I love it. I put, it's an antenna that I always use if I'm having trouble getting out. But like I mentioned in the video, the build quality there leaves a little bit to be desired. I wasn't entirely impressed with that. But, for a lot of people, it's a great backpacking or portable antenna, and it gets tons of positive press. People love it. So Blackheat 1028, he actually commented on a video I did where I built a Pi-Star hotspot for use with DMR radios. And he says, if we're talking digital, then does how many watts your radio has really matter? If I can see if we're trying to talk to a repeater or simplex, but if I have an OpenSpot 3 tethered to my cell phone and I use my HT, I can keep it in low power and talk longer, and I'll be getting out just fine. HT versus mobile are when talking digital, or am I wrong? And what I would say, or what I did say back to Blackheat, was that when you're using a hotspot, you're supposed to use your radio in the lowest setting. That way you're not going to overload it or potentially damage it. So I always set my BTEC DMR6X2, which is a fantastic HT, and it's a great DMR radio, to its lowest setting whenever using hotspots. Now I use it to talk with analog repeaters, and that's when I would turn it up. If I was going to use it for simplex, or if I was going to use it to talk on DMR repeaters, then obviously I would turn it up. But I think the question here is really around, do you need to use high power when using a hotspot? And the advice is no, don't do that. It's not necessary. Battery life and potential damage to equipment. And then I got another question in regards to DMR from African Twin, and he says, what's the best hotspot you can buy on the market? He only knows the DV Mega and the Shark RF. From my perspective, Shark RF makes the best hotspots. Now, there's a lot of other ones that are out there on the market. He says China also has many MMDVM boards on AliExpress. Pi-Star and YSF would be used. He's handy with ARM and soldering. What I would suggest is if you're going to buy one, you're probably going to want to buy two or three boards off of AliExpress. I bought one and I had to send it back because it was really poorly constructed, and the soldering was a mess and all those other things. I would look around and see if you can find somebody who's got a lot of positive reviews. I don't have a whole lot of experience buying the boards. Like I said, I bought one hotspot, then I rebuilt it, and then I built another one from scratch. But maybe look at a Zoom Spot or a kit like that from HRO, or take a look at RNL and see what they have over there, and put something together. I've known many people who personally bought the cheap MMDVM boards and had problems with them. So, take that as you will. And then Daryl Fisher, he commented another DMR comment. He says, "Thanks for the time you take for the time spent to make the videos. I've got the BTEC DMR 6X2, fantastic radio, and I'm looking for software that you're using in this video to make the code plug. What's the name of the program, and can you share a link when I can download the software? Thank you." And the reason I put this one in here is I wanted to talk a little bit about DMR and code plugs. I have a video out. It's called DMR for Beginners, and you might want to check that out. It should talk. I cover a lot about the building code plugs and what's involved there. But with DMR radios, my experience is that you always have to get the software. The CPS is what they call computer programming software. Some people say that stands for code plug software. I don't know. But you have to get it from the manufacturer, and you have to download it from their websites. It makes it difficult. Like there's not a program like Chirp that you can use to program many different DMR radios. You kind of have to use the proprietary software. Now there's tools that you can use to import and export your code plug from one version of a radio to another type of radio. But like I've had multiple DMR radios from Retevis. Each one of those I've had to download a different software or CPS to be able to program those radios. Like Retevis doesn't have one piece of software that covers all of their radios. That's kind of what I'm getting at right there. And then also the inability to easily take a code plug from one format to another is a little bit of a pain. But DMR is a lot of fun, and I like it quite a bit. So my recommendation, if he's already got a good radio, would be look at the BTEC or one of the Anytone radios. They generally seem to be the better ones on the market. And you should be happy with it. Bill Powell commented on my video about real versus fake Nagoya antennas. And he said he received a so-called Nagoya 771 the other day, which he ordered from Amazon. The package was clear wrap only with a sticker identifying it as Nagoya. That is suspect. The antenna tip was mangled as part of the antenna above the base was a little melted. Scan code was smudged. He immediately sent it back. Thank goodness for Amazon's return policy. Cannot say I'm disappointed in the 771 because this one may have been a fake. Could not accurately check out the SWR, but he was not going to keep it anyway. He appreciates the efforts and spread the word about fake brand name antennas. Thanks for sharing. And what's crazy about that is that sometimes a fake antenna can perform just as well as a legitimate one, and sometimes a legitimate antenna doesn't perform well. What I would say is that make sure that when you're buying HT antennas that you get them from reputable dealers. I buy all my Nagoya antennas from BTEC, and they sell them on their own store as well as on Amazon. Or if you want to take a look at another really good antenna dealer is RNL.com, RNLelectronics.com. And they've got tons of different antennas, so maybe you want to take a look at some diamonds or a Comet, not just the Nagoyas. Anyhow, good luck with it, and it's a shame that so many things are counterfeit these days. So here's the part in the video where I thank everybody for watching. If you have any questions, comments, recommendations, or suggestions, go ahead and post them below, and I'll do my best to respond. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.